Hello nature lovers! Today I am coming to you from my living room. It's very fitting that you can see a little bit of one of my wedding photos because today is actually our second wedding anniversary. But in today's video specifically, I'm going to give you guys a bit of a gardening update. So I'm going to show you bits of the garden from this summer and why you haven't seen a lot of gardening content because, spoiler alert, the garden didn't go very great this year. So if that's something that you have also experienced, don't feel bad. It's more than likely a good factor of it is the weather. But I'm also going to talk to you guys about why I really feel like I have been gardening the wrong way up here this year, and how I'm going to be going into the 2025 garden season with a completely different perspective. So let's take you out to the garden and show you what's been growing so far, and then we'll come back inside and talk about that mindset shift. So we tried growing some small cantaloupes, and we did get one tiny little melon, but as you can see, it's not doing good. And all of those tomatoes I planted that were super sickly, they are all producing some tomatoes. This one actually has a nice big sized tomato on it, and the first almost ripe ones are here as well. But a common theme you'll see throughout the garden this year is that everything is not looking too great. The jalapenos are growing lots, but they are very small. And the cucumber crop this year is pretty much non-existent except for one cucumber. So all in all, if your garden is struggling this year, don't take it personally. It's been a rough year weather-wise, and I've been gardening for 4 years now, and this is without a doubt the hardest conditions that I've had to grow in. So if you're feeling discouraged, if you're feeling unmotivated, if you're feeling frustrated, you can partially blame the weather. Well, this was supposed to be radishes, and this was supposed to be beets, and these are our zucchini plants. So that bed was basically a complete write-off. And then we have a little bit of dill there that's very small and stunted that didn't grow either. Our beans have put out enough to have one meal's worth. And these pole beans, like all this growth and flowering has happened in like the last 2 weeks. So this would have been great if it was like this all summer. It really wasn't. And here are carrots. Basically non-existent. The lettuce is looking a little sad for end of season, but we did get quite a bit of lettuce from the top. This was just a mixed pack. One of the other things I am still trying this season is using a cold frame. And so a cold frame is just a covered garden bed. So it uses the plastic to create a greenhouse effect. And I threw seeds in this September 8th. So normally we've already had our first frost of the year. We haven't got it yet. So I threw in some Alaska peas and also some lettuce. So I'm gonna see if I can get anything to grow before we get a frost. And with the peas, since they are frost hardy, we can technically grow them even if it goes down to about -5 overnight. So that is basically where we're at. I did get potatoes. They're already in the house, so I'm gonna go in and show you guys, but first I'm gonna check the chickens really quick and see if there's any eggs in the coop. I'll take that. Thank you, chickens. Now we have ate most of the potatoes already, but as you can see, we did get some nice sized ones. And so I'm definitely going to be growing more of these next year. Now, what did I mean by I might have been gardening wrong this whole time? What I mean by that, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot, is that I have been gardening with the mindset of trying to grow the gardens that I see on YouTube and on Instagram, but doing it within the confines of Zone 1 up north here. And while I don't think that's a bad goal to have, when I think about what I'm looking out of the garden, I'm looking to get fresh and healthy food for myself and my family. I am looking to challenge myself a little bit with growing my skill set as I'm still a new gardener. And I'm also looking to save money at the grocery store if and where possible. And I also have an interest in like the organic and the more like holistic health side of gardening and knowing where your food comes. And that's an area I've been prioritizing. So I've been prioritizing diversity and organic growing. Now, there's nothing wrong with having that kind of garden. There's nothing wrong with trying to garden like that in a cold climate zone. I'm in Zone 1 if this is the first video that you're watching, which is very up north in northern Saskatchewan, and I only have 75 days to grow food. I am not in a place where I'm ever gonna have the capacity to grow enough food for a year for my family. It's just not something that's financially or realistically attainable for the conditions that I grow in. But I've been using that mindset because those are the videos that I like to watch and that inspire me and really make me want to go out there and grow a really nice big garden. And so I think I've been gardening wrong in the sense that I've had the wrong priority and the wrong perspective. So the perspective and priorities that I'm going to be taking into next year, which is going to change a lot of how I'm growing, is that I want to grow food in a volume that is going to help out with our grocery bill. And that doesn't look like diversity. I have a very limited amount of garden space. I have a very limited season and very limited temperature ranges to grow within. And instead of trying to find varieties of all the things that can grow within my zone, next year I want to grow only the things that grow well and things that I can't easily get from my grocery store here. One example of this is I grew a half a bed worth of carrots. I can get carrots every single week at our grocery store for about 6-7 Canadian dollars for a bag of carrots. You know, it's not the cheapest, it's more expensive than the southern grocery stores, but I can get them at the grocery store. And those carrots this year are about that tall. They did not grow at all. They got a delayed start, they got stunted, they never developed anything past the greens, and I could have been using that area of the garden to grow something that I can't just get at the grocery store here. So an area, if it's something I can get at the grocery store up here, it's not gonna be something I'm gonna grow in the garden next year. So that is carrots, mushrooms we can get at the grocery store, green peppers we can get at the grocery store. We can get the odd jalapeno plant, so I'm probably not going to do as many as I've been doing the last couple years. However, we really enjoy being able to just run and grab a jalapeno off the plant. My husband likes the spicier peppers, so I'm probably going to do 1 or 2 jalapenos, 1 Hungarian wax pepper, and I think we're gonna try a cayenne pepper. I'm curious to see if I can dry it out for my own spice for that, and just to try something new, and it's also something we can't get at the grocery store here. So there are some things that I grew this year that I can't get at the grocery store that I want to grow more of, and that is the green beans. I almost never see green beans in the grocery store up here. That means I have to drive at least 13 to 15 hours south to be able to get them from a grocery store there, which is usually at least $500 round trip in gas. So anything I'd have to drive south for is definitely something I want to grow more of. I think I'm getting sidetracked and mixing things together, so apologies if you're following along in the video. I'll try to have like a running list of things I'm not going to grow anymore and things I am going to grow, just to make this a little bit easier. So we're not growing carrots, we are going to grow beans. Green beans specifically. Another thing, we do really like the garden potatoes. Now I can get potatoes from the grocery store, but they grow really well here and with very minimal effort, and so for that reason I'm still keeping them on the grow list. I think they taste better when they're from the garden. I enjoy digging them up out of the backyard. I did have footage for you guys of digging up the potatoes. However, there was really bad black flies, and I got completely chewed up while I was picking them and didn't notice, and I ended up with like blood smeared all over my face and hands from swatting at the biting flies. And that's just not something that YouTube or even myself really wants to see, so I'm not going to be sharing that footage. So potatoes are something I want to grow again. Green beans are something I want to grow. Peas we can get frozen at the grocery store, so I'm 50-50 on them because I really like fresh garden peas. And then lettuce is the other one. We can get iceberg lettuce fairly regularly all throughout the year up north here. But romaine lettuce is our favorite, and it's not always available at the store. So I think because the lettuce grew so well, it was arguably the thing that grew the best in my garden this year, I want to focus on growing romaine specifically, which is something I've only kind of dabbled in. I usually get some sort of mixed lettuce pack and just kind of toss it out and see where it goes. But I think specifically I want to do romaine. So far we are axing the beets, we are axing the squash, which would be this year was the cantaloupe and the zucchini. We didn't get any zucchini. Cucumbers, I have mixed ideas about because we can't get pickling cucumbers up here, and I do like to make pickles. I have a shorter season variety. This year it did not start well at all. That might possibly just be the weather this year. So jury's out on that. I'm gonna have to do some more thinking. I think if I planted them in where the cold frame is, possibly it could be better and we might get some actual cucumbers. So I'm still leaning towards cucumbers for that. But radishes, they did not grow again. That's the second year in a row I have not been able to grow radishes. And now there's a lot of factors that are going into if your garden's going to be successful. It's partially to do with your experience, your climate, even your microclimate in your backyards, how much precipitation you're getting, your evening temperatures, your soil health, your nutrients, whether or not you're fertilizing, all that kind of stuff goes into it. And so it's not going to be entirely just a priority thing. For me, it's definitely a mixture of all of those probably coming together to just make really bad conditions for this year. But that's a good segue into the second part, which is now that we've shifted, or I've shifted my priority into growing things that grow really well in my conditions. It's my cool weather stuff. Basically, if you're in the southern zone, anything like zone 5 and warmer, this is I'm basically growing your fall or your spring garden. Because I have limited time, cool temperatures, sticking to that family of stuff, I also want to focus on volume of food because that has by and far been the area I struggle the most. I can grow a handful of something, but I want to be able to grow a large enough quantity to be able to actually preserve. I bought a pressure canner last year. I have not even taken it out of the box because I've not grown enough of anything to be worth preserving. Possibly the potatoes if I wanted to can potatoes, but when you only get an ice cream pail's worth, you just want to eat it all fresh anyways. So I want to increase the volume. One way to do that is fertilizers. Now, in an ideal world, I would love to do this organically and have all organic compost and keep chemical fertilizers off, because there is definitely a part of me that agrees with a lot of the community discussion around if chemical fertilizers are good for your health. I have a lot of health issues. It's something I'm very aware of. But when I think of my goals for gardening, the financial aspect right now is more important to me than the health aspect. So I would rather be able to save some money purchasing things than to not care about saving money and be the whole organic route. If you are organic and you grow organic, I think that's fantastic. I would love to get there someday, maybe if we move to a warmer zone. But I think right now I've got to kind of throw that dream aside, or that goal, and just kind of knock it down a couple rungs, because I think it's preventing me from being able to get more out of the plants that I'm growing. So one of the things I haven't talked about whether or not I'm going to grow is the tomatoes. Because as you saw in the earlier clip, I do have a tomato that's ripening on the vine. I like and cook a ton with tomato products. Specifically, we have pasta probably at least once a week. We eat salsa year round. And that is definitely an area where if I could produce the quantities needed, I could make a good dent in my grocery bill. Now, if you've ever done pasta sauce before, you know the amount of tomatoes you need to make even a pint is a ton. I've had a very fun journey with that in the past where I thought I had so many tomatoes and it made 2.5 jars of tomato sauce, but it goes much further for things like salsa. Also using and trying our own barbecue sauce and other recipes like that I've seen on here. So I have been playing around with varieties, and I do think the tomatoes this year had a rough start. I started them 2 weeks later than I did last year, but arguably it was still 2 weeks too early for this year's gardening conditions. And so I think if I start them later this year and put them out in hopefully a better spring weather-wise, and maybe even look at some sort of temporary greenhouse structure just for the first couple weeks in the spring, it could still be worth it to grow the tomatoes. We can get tomatoes at the store. It is quite expensive. It's one of the ones that are, if you're already on a trip south, picking up a bunch of tomatoes when you're south is definitely worth it just for the grocery store price. So I can't get any volume for any decent price up here, but in terms of just having a tomato to add into a recipe, or if my husband wants to put it on pizza or nachos or anything that he likes eating tomatoes, I actually don't eat raw tomatoes. It's a texture thing. Then we can still get it at the store most of the year, but garden tomatoes taste better than store-bought tomatoes without a doubt, and especially for the end product, I love having garden tomatoes to make homemade salsa. So I think I'm gonna keep tomatoes on the grow list for this next year. They might also get axed though, which is kind of a weird thing to think about, because when you think of a garden tomato, that's like probably the most quintessential stereotypical vegetable that you grow in the garden. The onions I grew this year, they did grow. They didn't have enough time to bulb out, and so I'm not going to be worrying about growing them again. They were just a test anyways. I guess this is just a really long get all the ideas out of my head, just kind of an update a little bit with how this gardening season went. You guys haven't seen a lot of videos because there hasn't been a lot of content. So if you also struggled this year, I feel for you. I completely understand. Try not to take it too personally. And yeah, let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Let me know what your priorities in the garden are. I think that would be really cool to discuss in the comments below, because everybody can have different priorities and a successful garden can look different to everybody. So I think it's really, really cool to talk to other gardeners and kind of see what they're growing towards and what they're growing, like what their goals are. And yeah, if you guys enjoy this video, definitely make sure to let me know. I can talk more about kind of life perspective things like this too. It's more of a, what I would call sort of like a roots and refuge style video. I love listening to her talk and just share her ideas about the world. And so I wanted to try something like that myself, and I felt like this was a really good topic to do it with. So with that, I will see you guys in the next video.